подготовки экипажей и отработки операций программы полета в национальных центрах, которые вели подготовку к июлю 1975 года. На очередной встрече рабочих групп специалистов в октябре 1972 года в Москве, кроме других достигнутых договоренностей, была утверждена дата начала реализации проекта как дата 15 июля 1975 года. Одной из главных задач, которую необходимо было решить специалистам двух стран, это добиться технической совместимости двух совершенно разных космических аппаратов, их бортовых систем и оборудования, а также средств, обеспечивающих их полет. Взаимодействовать, выполнять те или иные задачи, и целями совместных полетов могут быть спасение экипажа с помощью прилета корабля, оснащенного универсальным стыковочным агрегатом другой страны, доставка срочных грузов на космические аппараты или станцию с применением полета корабля другой страны, также реализация международного проекта с участием различных государств, создающих космическую технику, совместимую при сборке космических конструкций общими усилиями. В проекте совместного полета «Аполло-Союз» были разработаны и реализованы минимальные требования по совместимости технических систем двух стран. Для достижения большей степени совместимости бортовых систем космических кораблей Союза советская сторона предложила разработать новую модификацию корабля «Союз-М». И тогда требовались доработки. Это большой список, я буду сокращать его, потому что это технические детали, которые, может быть, не очень понятны будут с их долгим объяснением. Это нужно было поставить действительно на ракету-носитель нагрузку до 7 тонн, до 7 тысяч килограмм. И новый носитель «Союз-Y» это смог сделать, он применялся. Это было первое изменение. Для обеспечения стыковки корабля «Аполло» и «Союз-М» были разработаны андрогинные периферийные агрегаты. Каждая из сторон проводила разработку агрегатов самостоятельно, но с согласованными параметрами, чертежами. И потом проводились совместные испытания. Длительность полета «Союза» была менее 7 суток, поэтому пришлось делать все мероприятия, связанные с тем, чтобы увеличить энерговооруженность «Союза» и запасы как кислородных, так и поглощающих СО2, углекислоту, патронов. С целью уменьшения уровня радиоизлучений и уменьшения количества используемых частот радиоканалов, улучшение других характеристик приемной и передающей бортовой аппаратуры, телеметрическая система и командная радиолиния на «Союзе» были заменены на цифровые системы. Для обеспечения межбортовых переговоров экипажей в составе корабля «Союз-М» была введена новая радиосистема «Ветка», по-русски «Ветка». В телевизионной системе «Кречет» в целях улучшения качества бортовых телепередач организуется канал изображения с цветной телекамеры. Пятое. Применение атмосферы с повышенным содержанием кислорода в отсеках корабля потребовало разработки системы специальных противопожарных мер. На борту «Союз-М» установили пенные огнетушители впервые. Состав специально разработанной пены позволял экипажу дышать при нахождении пены в отсеках. Полетные костюмы экипажа изготавливались из специальной неэлектризующейся, негорючей ткани. Шестое. Ввиду большого количества изменений, внесенных в бортовые системы космического корабля «Союз», было принято решение выпустить на модернизированный корабль полный комплект чертежей, как для нового корабля «Союз-М». И объем работ по модернизации корабля «Союз» по сравнению со стоимостью его первоначальной разработки составил 35–40%. Экспериментальная отработка корабля «Союз-М» включала летные испытания двух кораблей в беспилотном режиме и одного в пилотируемом. Для этого были заказаны 6 кораблей «Союз-М». К 1974 году были проведены испытательные полеты беспилотных кораблей, а третий в декабре 1974 года был испытан экипажем Филипченко и Рукавишников в полете, и он показал хорошие результаты. Четвертый корабль был определен как основной для выполнения совместного полета. Пятый корабль являлся резервным, он стоял на старте. Он был подготовлен к немедленному старту при невозможности использования основного корабля или его ракеты. Резервный корабль был подготовлен к полету и установлен вместе с ракетой-носителем на резервной стартовой площадке космодрома Байконур. Впоследствии он был использован для полета к станции «Салют» по своей программе. Шестой был впоследствии использован для выполнения автономного орбитального пилотируемого полета по научной программе как автономный полет. В процессе подготовки и проведения испытательных полетов кораблей «Союз-М» модернизировался и наземный комплекс управления. Наземные измерительные пункты были дооснащены средствами связи для работы с бортовыми радиокомплексами корабля «Союз-М». В 1974 году был введен в строй Московский центр управления полетами ЦУП-М, МСС-М. Для обеспечения взаимодействия советского центра Москва и американского центра управления в Хьюстоне была разработана схема связи, включающая необходимое количество различных каналов связи между центрами для повышения надежности и безопасности полета. Были созданы консультативные группы, которые были направлены советские в Хьюстон, американские в Москву. И this is new MCC Center. Американская сторона 1 в январе 1973 года объявила составы экипажей по программе «Аполло-Союз». Основной экипаж – Стаффорд, Брандт, Слейтон. Дублирующий экипаж – Бин, Эванс, Лусма. Экипажи поддержки – Бабкок, Криппен, Овермайер. В мае 1973 года через Академию наук были объявлены советские экипажи для участия в программе «Аполло-Союз». Первый экипаж – Леонов, Кубасов. Второй экипаж – Анатолий Филипченко, Николай Рукавишников, которые испытали уже этот корабль. Третий – Владимир Дженебеков, Борис Андреев. Четвертый – Юрий Романенко, Александр Иванченков. Stand up, please. Wake up. Александр Иванченков, participant of the project Союз Аполло. Всего с мая 1972 года по июнь 1975 года состоялось более 20 совместных встреч советских и американских специалистов, 11 совместных испытаний, 6 совместных тренировок экипажей и 6 тренировок персоналов ЦУПа, Центров управления полетом. Было подготовлено более 1600 документов объемом от нескольких десятков до нескольких тысяч страниц. Кроме бортовых инструкций, экипажей кораблей, написанных на языках стран по принадлежности космических кораблей, оба экипажа были снабжены инструкциями по совместной деятельности в кораблях «Аполло» и корабле «Союз-М» на английском и русском языках. В процессе совместной деятельности экипажи вели переговоры между собой, каждый на языке партнера. 22 мая 1975 года в Москве в Академии наук под председательством академика Котельникова с участием делегации НАСА под руководством заместителя директора Джона Лоу состоялось совместное заседание по рассмотрению отчета директоров проекта «Аполло-Союз» о готовности к полету. Был подписан итоговый документ. 15 июля 1975 года с космодромом Байконур стартовала ракета-носитель «Союз-Y» с космическим кораблем «Союз-М», получивший регистрационный номер «Союз-19». Через 7,5 часов с мыса Канаверал на орбите Земли был выведен космический корабль «Аполло». Символичным стал момент стыковки кораблей «Аполло» и «Союз» 17 июля над рекой Эльба, над Германией, где в 1945 году встретились американские и советские войска для окончательного разгрома фашистских германских войск во время Второй мировой войны 1939-1945 годов. Программа совместного полета была полностью выполнена. После расстыковки кораблей «Аполлон» и «Союз-19» 21 июля 1975 года совершил посадку в казахстанской степи экипаж космического корабля «Союз-19». Экипаж «Аполлона» приводнился в океане 25 июля 1975 года. Итоги выполненного проекта «Аполло-Союз» говорят о том, что это был успешный выход на новые уровни сотрудничества. Союз имеет, кроме политического, «Аполло» и «Союз», это имеет, кроме политического, большое научно-техническое значение. Полет подтвердил правильность технических решений по обеспечению совместимых средств сближения и стыковки будущих пилотируемых кораблей и станций, а также обоснованность принципов взаимодействия наземных служб СССР.
As the validity of the principles of cooperation between the group services of the USSR and USA and flight control from the two centers located in different continents. Invaluable experience was gained in the cooperation between the two centers in ensuring joint flight control of spacecraft from different countries. APDS docking units developed in USSR and USA. They operated flawlessly in a mods fully meeting the expectations of Soviet and American designers. Based on the Apollo and Soyuz docking units, spacefaring countries have now developed an international standard for docking units for manned spacecraft. This standard is open to all countries worldwide. Docking unit developed according to this standard between installed on the International Space Station. We became participants of the witnesses of how, on the basis of the technologies of organizing joint work carried out in Apollo-Soyuz project, larger scale project were carried out. Mir shuttle, Mir NASA, 1993-1998, as well as the USS project, which is being implemented today, in which Russia and the USA, European countries, Canada, and Japan are participating. Apollo astronaut Thomas Stafford, commanded on the crew, wittily remarked after the flight, "This flight showed the world, that is the Soviet Union and America, can cooperate in space. This can cooperate on Earth." Now I want to say that 50 years of this project we celebrated in Russia, in Moscow. And my friend Robert Cabana was presented in the Museum of Space on the conference dedicated to that flight. We also conducted one meeting in the headquarters office in Moscow. And Energia made a memorable medal that today I want to give to Benz Brand, because he's one of the remaining, unfortunately, alive astronauts that participated in this flight, and to my friend Robert Cabana. This is the medal made by those people that made spacecraft ships for the Apollo. Большое спасибо.
Thank you.
Alexander Willett-Lichna, excellent talk. When I think about Apollo-Soyuz, 1975, the middle of the Cold War, and what we were able to accomplish working together, and the birth of ASE coming out of that, I can't believe that there isn't anything that we can't do if we take time to work together. And the one thing I've learned traveling all over the world and flying in space is that we are all much more alike than we are different. We just need to look for that sameness in one another and have common goals, and we can accomplish anything. All right, we're back on time, pretty much. We're just a little late. I'm going to give everybody a 10-minute break, okay? 10 minutes. If nothing else, stand up and stretch. We're going to get some chairs up here, and I think we've got two excellent panel discussions. We've covered Shuttle Mir, 1970, or Apollo-Soyuz, 1975, Shuttle Mir, 1994 to 98. Our next is going to cover the International Space Station from 1998 to present. So please come back. Thank you. And may I have my panelists, please? Julie Payette. Bistri. Я опоздал.
Dankeschön.
We got mics to pass.
Thank you.
All right. So let's talk about the International Space Station. I want to introduce this panel that we have up here. We've got a lot of experience. So 1998 was a long time ago. 2000, 25 years ago, a permanent human presence in space. That's absolutely amazing. So, with me today, we have Julie Payette, Canadian Group 2 astronaut in 1992, NASA Group 16 in 1996, flew on STS-96, STS-127 that delivered the GEM, and that flight also had a record 13 people on board and had all ISS partners represented. That was pretty cool when you're up there on station. We have Drew Feustel. Drew was selected to be an astronaut in 2000. He flew STS-125, the Hubble repair mission in 2009, STS-134, Expedition 5556, Soyuz MS-08 in 2018, and did 9 EVAs. We have Jim Voss, selected to be an astronaut in 1987, flew on STS-44, 53 with me, that was a great flight, 69, 101, Expedition 2, and he was the backup for both Mike Foale and Andy Thomas during the Shuttle Mir program before he was on the second increment on the International Space Station. Yuri Usachov, selected to be an astronaut in 1989, flew Mir EO-15 in 1994, Mir EO-21 in 1996, STS-101 in 2000, and Expedition 2 in 2001, and did 6 spacewalks on Mir. 7, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut, but yeah. And finally, Andre Coopers. We all know Andre. Andre was selected in 1998. He did the Delta mission to ISS on Soyuz TMA-4 in 2004, and Expedition 3031 in 2011, and was kind enough to host us last year in the Netherlands. So thank you all for being here with me today. All right, so I have a whole list of questions, and hopefully we'll have time to take some questions for the audience. But I'm going to start at that end. I'm going to start with you, Andre. And my question for you is, having hosted this in the Netherlands last year, and knowing what all goes into this, but the importance of our organization, how do you see the importance of ASE?
Well, I see many things. First of all, how it started. In the Cold War with Soviet cosmonauts and Apollo astronauts. That's a very important thing, to be above the politics, to all work together for the benefit of the planet. And a very important part of the ASE is the outreach. I think that's very important to show young people, all people actually, how important and how beneficial spaceflight is. We all work there for the benefit of the planet. So I think that's are the 2 most important things for me. And of course, this international cooperation. That is very rewarding, I must say, talking with all these different disciplines. Also, all continents are here now, for example. That's a very nice one. So it's really an organization for the whole planet and doing the best for the planet above all politics. That's important for me.
All right, and what was your most memorable thing from being on the International Space Station? If you had one thing, you can only give one thing that you found was absolutely amazing that you remember.
Oh, that's difficult. There's a lot of things. But continuing on this international cooperation, I was honored to bird the first cargo Dragon to the station. And when I was doing that, I realized that here I am, I'm a Dutch astronaut of a European space agency, working with the Canadian robotic arm to bring an American commercial spacecraft to an international space station. I thought it's beautiful how all these technologies and all these nationalities come together. I think that was absolutely a highlight. Also, yeah, to express this international cooperation. I love that. Beautiful.
Absolutely. So, Yuri, you and Jim flew together on the second increment to the International Space Station along with Susan Helms. And I wonder, is there one story that you want to tell me about Jim that he hasn't told me that you can embarrass him?
No, Джим, no. Только одну историю, да, Джим? Я по-русски... У нас есть перевод, да? Чтобы, может быть, понятнее было. У нас была такая процедура, которая называлась перестыковка. Когда надо было сесть в Союз, Джиму, Сьюзан и мне, вручную отстыковаться, облететь станцию и освободить стыковочный узел для следующих миссий. И я был командир, я должен был управлять Союзом, и я очень тщательно подошел к тренировкам. Вы знаете, мы должны это делать в скафандре на случай разгерметизации, на случай неожиданного возвращения. И я очень много примерялся в Союзе и понял, что в скафандре это будет сделать или очень сложно, или невозможно. Я принял для себя решение, что я буду делать это перестыковку без скафандра. В нарушение, конечно, всех правил. И мы собрались однажды у стола вечером, и я сказал, нам предстоит перестыковка. Я принял решение, что я буду делать это без скафандра. Сьюзан, ты будешь это делать в скафандре. Если что-то случится, кто-то должен вернуться. Сказал Джиму, а ты реши, как ты хочешь сам. Друзья мои, он ни секунды не задумываясь сказал, командир, я как ты. Представляете, он видел, что я примерялся, видел, что я принимаю решение очень небезопасное, и он, желая разделить со мной вот эту ответственность, тоже перестыковывался без скафандра. И мне кажется, это может быть самый главный опыт, который мы привозим из МКС. Потому что железо – это все хорошо, это важно, какой твой дом, но гораздо важнее люди, которые там работают. И этот случай, я часто его вспоминаю и рассказываю на встречах, потому что это очень хороший показатель, как близко могут сойтись люди, которые несут ответственность, выполняют что-то очень важное. И с тех пор мы, когда переписываемся по почте с Джимом, мы всегда пишем в конце «Твой космический брат». Может быть, это самый главный результат, который мы привозим со станции. Извините, что так долго.
So, Jim, would you like to respond to that?
Can I add to it a
You,
little
you
bit?
may add to that.
Yuri started in the middle of the story. The story actually started the day before when we had to sleep shift. That's when you don't go to bed for a very long time or you go to bed really early. The Russians have a very different way of sleep shifting than we would do in the United States. And they said, just go to bed at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and sleep, and then wake up and do all the things you have to do for the undocking, because they wanted to be over a Russian ground station while we were doing some of the procedures. So we couldn't go to sleep at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so we just stayed up until normal bedtime, and we slept maybe for an hour, maybe not even that much. And then we got up, we did all the things for the rest of the night to prepare the space station for us to leave it and hopefully to come back to it. So we were exhausted, and we were about to do one of the most dangerous things that we had to do, fly a spaceship away from the station and then dock with it again. And we trusted Yuri would be able to do it, but we were very tired. The last step before we got in the Soyuz, we were sitting, waiting to close the last hatch, and we were waiting for the Russian control center, the SOUP, to call us and say, close the hatch, get in the Soyuz, and do your job. We were floating in a little space waiting for this call, And the next thing I knew, I woke up. We had all fallen asleep. We were so tired that we just fell asleep. But then we got in the Soyuz. Yuri was wonderful. He controlled the spacecraft, very difficult task that he had to do, and the lighting was very poor for this task. But he was able to undock, redock. Everything was wonderful, but we said we'll never do that again. If you want us to do a perestroika, it'll be when we're well rested.
Drew,
Bob.
you've been to Hubble, you've been to the International Space Station, you've done 9 spacewalks. Tell us about the difference between like a spacewalk on Hubble or a spacewalk on ISS. What are your thoughts?
Great. And first thing I want to say is I don't know who the imposter is on the wall back here, but if anybody sees him, tell him he's using my name. That was a long time ago. All those flights are different, obviously. I don't want to talk about Hubble too much to offend those who haven't been there. I don't want to make people feel bad about that. But the inside joke, I guess, for the flyers. They're all very different flights. Hubble was exceptional. You know, what was unique about Hubble was that the rate at which we did the spacewalks, it was 5 spacewalks, 5 days in a row, back to back. So we had very little break in between those. Fortunately, I think we trained at about a 12-to-1 ratio in the pool versus the time we spent on orbit with those spacewalks. So that was kind of breakneck speed. Second flight on 134, the last flight of Endeavour, was a visit to the ISS. So that was the first time I got to see the International Space Station. And we did several spacewalks, 4, I think, on that mission as well. The difference was the pace was much slower. We had 16 days and on orbit, and the EVAs were spread out over multiple days, so we had time in between, several more days. And then visiting ISS again in 2018 was my first opportunity to actually live in space. The other times I felt like I was just working in space, and as those who know flown to ISS on a shuttle flight, you're pretty busy. I mean, we've all been there, and or many of us have been there. You're very focused, you're very task-oriented. ISS is similar, you have a lot of work to do, but it's obviously spread out over much longer periods. So that was the first time I felt that I had a chance to live in space, and we had 3 spacewalks sprinkled in over 6.5 months, which was a much more relaxed pace when it came to those activities. But all very unique and different. I'm fortunate to have had those different experiences. But Hubble was special in its own right, mostly because a lot of it was a blur because of how much we had to get done in the short time that we had.
Excellent. Julie, so in 1998, we had the node attached to the orbiter docking station. We rendezvoused with the FGB and grabbed it with the arm, and then we put everything together and left. You were on the first mission to actually dock with what was then the berth of the International Space Station and outfit it for the crew that was to be coming up. Tell us about that flight, about outfitting the ISS, getting it ready.
So we saw a picture of the docking system earlier. Norm talked about it and Sasha talked about it. It's this place where the 2 spacecraft get together. And that was made by a Russian engineer designer. His name was Vladimir Syrometnikov. And we actually went to Russia to train on this. And we all coming into the training session, and there's lots of people, and both our crews were there. Bob was on the first flight to put the first 2 modules together. We were the first crew to came right after to dock manually with the space station, and then you guys came in a couple of years later. So we're there training, and just in the very, I think, American fashion. My commander, Kent Rominger, was asking a lot of a question of what if? What if the hooks don't work? What if the pedals break? What if the seal is not good? And then we heard a door slam. And then there's this guy, and I don't think he's 5 foot tall. Yeah, he's just really short guy, and he's got a lab coat on. It's Vladimir Syrometnikov, and he is purple. He is so angry. He's got his finger in the air, and he says to Ken Rominger, he says, "Никогда не работает. Никогда не." Double negative, as you know, is a positive. So he was just like, it never doesn't work. And 37 shuttle flights to ISS, 9 flights to Mir, and still to this day being used by visiting spacecraft. That docking system has never failed. Bravo, Vladimir.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool, getting trained on it by the guy that actually designed it. And he gave me a book, Docking in Space, that he wrote. And I thought that, and signed it. And I treasure it. He has since passed away. But to take that Apollo-Soyuz design and then adapt it, pretty darn cool and very reliable. If you look inside the shuttle, now you can go in mock-ups and stuff of it, and there's one panel that's different from all the other panels, and I asked people, do you know why that is? And they have no clue. I said, that's because that was designed and built by the Russians and not by the United States, all the controls for the docking system. Jim, so shuttle, Mir, ISS, and I have to say, Jim is a real trooper. When I was chief of the astronaut office, folks did not want to go to Russia to train. It was arduous. It was long. You had to learn Russian. We were flying 7 to 9 shuttle flights a year, and everybody wanted to fly on shuttle. They didn't necessarily want to put that effort in. And Jim backed up Mike Foale and Andy Thomas on Mir. He was a backup again, and then prime crew for the second increment. And Jim, I want to thank you for that. But from all that experience, what do you see as the difference between the shuttle and Mir? What did you take away from all that? What did you learn?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure that I volunteered. It was more of a doing my duty for the Marine Colonel, head of the office, and standing at attention in front of him when he said he really needed me to go. Well, but I also didn't know what a wonderful, wonderful life experience it would be to go and live and work in Russia and get to know my Russian friends so well. It was worth it. And thank you, Bob, for sending me to Russia. And I actually got there on my birthday, so I considered it a birthday present from Bob. But your question about the 3 different programs, they were all wonderful, wonderful programs. The space shuttle was technically very complex and very capable. It could do so many different things. It could carry so much to orbit. We could do so much work and science on board. We could repair satellites. There were so many capabilities. Very special technical program. The shuttle Mir program, on the other hand, was a learning experience for us. We were trying to learn more about space stations, how to work there, how to live there, how to do better at rendezvousing with a spacecraft like that. And it was a learning experience from an international cooperation perspective because there was a lot of distrust between the Russians and the US at first. We were stealing their technology, they were stealing our technology. In fact, when I first went over there, I made some friends, and they told me later they thought I was a spy because I'd been an intelligence officer for a while in the Army, and that was in my bio, and so they thought I was intelligent, so I was a spy, and that's why I was there. But it was a great learning experience for us. Then the International Space Station, we applied a lot of the lessons that we learned there, and we, I think, really cooperated, and we still are to this day. Despite differences politically, we're still cooperating extremely well as space agencies, and we're doing remarkable, wonderful things in space working together. And we still have close friendships among the people who are working together, and I hope that maybe some of that will still rub off up higher up. And if people, if our politicians would hear what Julie has to say about cooperation and getting along together and working together, I think that maybe they would listen a little bit and do better. But all 3 were great programs, but I think for a little bit different reasons.
Yeah, I always said if we could take our world leaders and just put them up on the space station together and lock them up there for 6 months, they have to figure out how to work together and get along, right?
Боб, извини, я хотел добавить просто, может быть, не все знают, что мы с Джимом вместе служили в Германии. Я служил срочную службу как солдат, а Джим в это время служил с другой стороны границы как офицер. Поэтому наша история началась очень давно.
So, Shuttle missions, short duration missions, assembly missions were very different from a long duration mission. On a shuttle mission, on an assembly mission, you had no free time at all. They gave you more than you could do, and no astronaut wants to leave anything undone, so you worked really long hours to make sure you accomplished everything. And there wasn't a lot of time for fun, but we still figured out ways to have fun. But on a long duration mission, for long duration flyers, I'm asking you, what do you do for entertainment? When you're up there for 6 months to a year, what was the most fun thing that you did? What did you do for entertainment? Drew?
We played tennis in space. I don't know if anybody ever saw the pictures from it, but it's really hard to play tennis in space, it turns out, because you can't play it like you play it on Earth. But that's what we did. We actually cleared out Node 2. I found some netting that was used in the front of one of the SIR rack or one of the furnace racks or something, and stretched it across Node 2. And then we had these little micro-sized tennis rackets that Indy had worked to send up. And so we played tennis, and it was totally unsuccessful in the sense that it's just, imagine smacking a ball around with some ping pong paddles. But anyways, we did it and played tennis. It was kind of fun.
Julie, what did you do on your flight?
Well,
Short duration.
Both my flights were short duration. The second mission, and not to brag, Drew, but we had 5 EVAs in 16 days, and I happened to have 3 of my crew members here in this room. Commander Mark Polanski for STS-127, spacewalker Tom Marshburn, somewhere, and Koichi Wakata, who was on board the space station for a long-duration flight. I don't know if you remember, is Tom in that room? Tom, do you remember we would go into the Japanese module? We played tricks with orientation. We would fly into the Japanese module, and it had a small storage compartment on top of it, and you could fly in, and if you're on the ground, you would go up. But we'd go up, we'd sit upside down in there, and then tell our brain that we were the right side up. And it's actually quite fun. You come into somewhere and you think this is up, down, left, right, but you tell your brain to actually switch. And you go upside down, and that becomes your new orientation. And it's actually quite a fun. I'm not sure I explained this well.
So what she's saying is, we train in simulators in a 1G environment, and you get used to the floor being the floor and the ceiling's the ceiling. Like on the shuttle flight deck, the floor is the floor and the windows are at the top. But a real space flyer, it's shifting your frame of reference. If you can immediately shift your frame of reference no matter which module you're in and make whatever you want to be the floor, the ceiling, or the wall, then you've truly adapted to being in place. In fact, it was Jim that taught me this on our second flight. We're flying minus ZLV, so the windows are pointed at the Earth, the overhead windows, so you look up and see the Earth. But if you sit on the ceiling and you make the windows the floor like you're in a glass-bottom boat and it actually feels like it's the floor, then you've actually been able to shift to that frame of reference of a space flyer. Jim, what'd you do for fun on flight?
Oh, there were a lot of things. That was one of the things. Remember, we thought the airlock hatch was like a hot tub, and we all sat around, and it's on the wall, so it was kind of entertaining. We played sports some also. Sports seems to be something that you try to do because the space environment is so different, the microgravity and floating. I taught Yuri how to play baseball. We had a big, long flashlight and a tennis ball we were supposed to squeeze for exercise, and we played baseball, and I would throw the ball for him, and he would hit it. We were in the FGB, so a long hallway, and then he pitched to me, and I'm the baseball player. I've played all my life. I couldn't hit it at all because I expected the ball to drop, and it went perfectly straight. And he struck me out every time. And we played volleyball with a globe, a plastic globe that we had of the Earth. And I really liked playing volleyball because at my height, I could still be a spiker to spike the ball.
Yuri, what'd you do for entertainment on your flight?
Когда мы летали с Валерием Поляковым вместе, и у нас было примерно полдня свободного времени, Валерий придумал, мы взяли панель из-под контейнера пищи, она зеленая, как поле, сделали из ремешка ворота, брали каплю большую, помещали над этим полем, а потом дули, чтобы загнать в ворота с двух сторон. Это очень хорошая тренировка для легких была. Капля это разлеталась, это было очень весело. Мы тренировались, командир Афанасьев сказал, что вы делаете, вы сейчас станцию мне испортите. Это было очень весело. И надо, наверное, патентовать такие работы, потому что есть игры, которые возможны только в невесомости.
Andre.
Well, a lot of things like sports as well, but what I liked very much were the Friday evenings, the movie night. And it was always comedies. And I never laughed so much in my life as during these evenings with tears in my eyes. That was one very nice one. And I flew together with Don Pettit, and he had his Saturday Science, and that was fun. I remember this experiment that he had a little speaker with a water droplet on top of that, and then you could see the bead in all kind of geometrical shapes in the water. That was how great entertainment, I must say.
Don Pettit's my hero. Don landed from the space station on his 70th birthday, and John Glenn was 77 when he flew. I'm still holding out hope. I figure flying the first assembly mission, I ought to get to fly the last one and bookend it. So that's that's what I want to do. All of us who are flyers, we've had a unique opportunity to have a vantage point of the Earth that not very many people get to see. And on a short duration flight, for my entertainment, anytime I had a spare minute, I just stuck my nose up to the window and watched the Earth go by. It's mesmerizing, and you just can't appreciate how beautiful it is. So the Earth is changing, and I would like to ask all of you, what are your thoughts? What words of advice do you have for the folks that haven't flown in space that you would share, having seen what you've seen from Earth? Who wants to go first?
Well, I'd like to go actually back to the Apollo era when they start to talk about Spaceship Earth, that we are all astronauts on Spaceship Earth, and it really feels like that. In the beginning, my first flight, you're working very hard, you don't want to make mistakes, etc. But then there is this moment that you take your time, and I realized that it was outside. I was not part of it anymore. Going around it, and then I realized this is it. This feels like a spaceship. The universe feels very, well, feels threatening. It's cold, empty radiation, and that's it. This very thin atmosphere. So I really started to feel it like a living object. It looked like a cell with a very thin membrane that could break any moment. So that is something very, very special, and it took some time to realize that because you're working very hard all the time. But then all of a sudden you realize, whoa, this is something like a living creature, actually.
Yuri, any thoughts you'd like to share on that?
Actually, two things. First, it's a long duration weightlessness. It's not possible to have experience here. And Earth from space. My first expectation was, oh, Earth is so small, it's so fragile, it's just... And when I first time saw it, I was amazed in the size and how beautiful it is. It's 1.5 hours, just one orbit, and you can spend all day just looking at the Earth. And I realized we are lucky we have such a beautiful home, and we don't understand. We live too close, all this beautiful. That's why we, most of the time, too busy to understand how good, how beautiful our planet is.
Jim.
Yeah, on my first space flight, STS-44, we launched going east into the night. And so when we got to orbit, it was dark outside. So I got out of my seat, went down to the middeck, took off my suit, helped others with things. And then I drifted back upstairs to get to work because you have a lot to do when you first get to orbit. And as I went by the windows, the big, large windows on the top of the space shuttle, there was the Earth. And I was awed by it. I had not anticipated, I hadn't thought about it, but I saw the Earth and I went to the window and I just stayed there looking at the Earth go by. And it was so beautiful and so special. And I just stayed there. And then my commander, Fred Gregory, said, Jim, get back to work. We got stuff to do. And I had to pull myself away from the window. And so looking out the window on all my space flights was one of my favorite things to do. It's just a beautiful Earth, and we get to appreciate it from a little bit different perspective I wish everyone had that same opportunity.
Drew, did you notice when you talked? Did you notice changes between your first flight and your last flight?
Thanks, because I was going to talk about my feelings in space, but since that's what we were talking about, but now you throw me a
can talk about
curveball.
feelings.
Yeah, so I didn't really notice many changes, between the first flight and the last flight, mainly because on the first two flights I couldn't pay attention. What I noticed about the last flight when I finally got to start looking at the planet was how, and it's already been expressed, that you can stare at it forever because every second that you look at the Earth is never the same when you see it again. Either because the orbit has changed, or the time of day has changed, or the seasons have changed, or whatever, but it's never, ever identical to the last time that you saw it, no matter how many times you see it over 6.5 months in that case. So that was unique to me, and my overall impression of the planet was one of vulnerability, and that if every human could realize the vulnerability of us on this only planet, and the fact that there's no grocery stores or hardware stores nearby in space, like it's just this place, I think we would treat each other differently, and we would go about our business very differently on the planet. So,
Julie.
I use the expression when you look at the Earth from above that you see a blue marble in the backdrop of darkness. It's incredibly beautiful, it's magnificent. But then if you are wondering, because the folks who have here, what you can do is you can do a lot. You have to almost think like an astronaut. When we go up in the spacecraft is protecting us. Without it, we can't live in space. The only place where we can live and that we share collectively is planet Earth at our feet. But every single one of us make sure we're meticulous. We don't put the spacecraft in jeopardy. We don't flick the wrong switch. We don't do something that will harm this machine without which we can't live. Well, so whenever you compost or you recycle or you vote or you do something, it might be just a little thing, but that little thing multiplied millions of times will help protecting this only planet that we have. Because at the moment, no matter how we wish, we've never been anywhere where we can live. The only thing we have is planet Earth.
Bob, what about you?
What about me? I just, I can remember my very first flight back in 1990. I saw, if anybody has seen the movie The Blue Planet, I went and saw it after my first flight in IMAX. And I said, that's it. That's how it looks on that big screen. I said, no, that's not it. It looks better. But what I remember from that flight, that was a 28-degree inclination flight, 28 north to south. It was the blue planet. It was tropical, it was water, it was everything. Then my second flight was a high inclination flight in December, going up to 51.6 degrees inclination. And no, 57. We were at 57 degrees on STS 53. And it was in the northern hemisphere most of the time where it was light. We were on the Terminator, but I just remember mountainous, frozen wasteland for the entire flight. It was hard to believe that anybody lived on it. It was quite a disparity. But I remember on that first flight, looking down on the Amazon and just seeing all the fires and the smoke going from west-east across the entire Amazon. It was being burned off. And I think it's, this is a special place that we live on, and we need to take care of it. So, I got time for a couple more, maybe one more. The International Space Station has been up there with a crew for 25 years. It started in 1998. In the spring, early 2028, SpaceX is going to deliver a deorbit module to the International Space Station to help for a controlled deorbit. And it's going to take about 1.5 to 2 years for the orbit to decay, where there's enough propulsion in that deorbit module along with the prop on the Russian side to do a controlled deorbit of the International Space Station in 2030. it is going to come to an end. And that's going to be kind of a sad day for those of us that had a chance to be a part of it. So I will ask each of you, and you can raise your hand who wants to go first. What do you think the major contribution of the International Space Station is, or was at that time? What did we learn from the International Space Station? What's its major contribution to society, to our life, to our world?
I'll go first because maybe it'll be the easy answer. Nobody can repeat it. I think it's continuous human presence in space and international cooperation. I mean, it's really the only model that exists like that in our entire species and has existed for 25 years. And I think that's incredible. And we've all referenced it for the last couple of decades, even outside of our community. It's been referenced as a model for how we cooperate and achieve great things. And that's what it does. And it's going to be interesting to see how that carries forward because the models won't be the same. We already know that.
Anyone else want to add anything? Andre? Well, Jim, you go and then Andre.
Yeah, building anything in space is really difficult, but I think one of the greatest things about the International Space Station was that we built it with work being done in Japan, Canada, Russia, the United States, Europe, and all of these people who had a shared common interest in space were able to build something that worked very well together. And building stuff like that's hard, but building it in different places and then putting it together in an even more difficult place like space was a remarkable technical achievement. And then to use it for 30 years to do science and research and to learn more about living and working in space together, I think was just a tremendous achievement.
Andre? Okay,
Yeah,
Jerry.
sure. I'm partially answer this question, but I think I realized that after flight, crew members speak about each other from different point of view, not like they did before flight. And it's a very interesting phenomenon because it's special group of people, cosmonaut, astronaut, and their relationship between each of them. And we should learn more about how this group of people gather together and what's main important stuff. It shows us we can to work together like we do in space, on Earth. That's why we should learn about it and try to understand what we're supposed to change here to have the same experience on the Earth.
Actually, that adds, what I have to say, that adds to that, because what I think is maybe the most important thing is that it has been proposed for a Nobel Peace Prize several times. And we still have some years, maybe we make it. I think that's a beautiful example how to work in space together. So it's a fantastic place. The research we did is threefold. I mean, you do it for space itself. How to cool a satellite, what material protects against radiation, etc. It's fundamental research. Does a cell have organs to feel where gravity is? How does a flame, fluid physics, all kind of different basic stuff. And then the third was applied science. All kind of companies, industries that do their research there as well to improve production process. It's a beautiful place to show how intelligent we are, but also how wise we are. We need to work together and do all this for the benefit of the whole planet.
Julie?
I think about, say, 500 years from now, what are we going to remember from ISS? And we're not going to remember the names of the folks who worked on it necessarily, but we will remember that this was in 1998 when your crew put the first module together, first time in the history of humanity that people had decided to put money, resource, heart, time, effort to bridge the gap, to work together, to build a scientific laboratory in one of the harshest places in the world, in orbit of the Earth, and to do so simply to advance knowledge and to promote international collaboration. That will be remembered in 500 years from now. And let it not be the only time
Amen. All right, final question. And then we got to transition to commercial space because we need a future after ISS. I'll give you an opportunity to add one more thing that you'd like to add. Anything that you'd like to say before we end the panel. And we're going to start with you, Julia, because I always start with Andre. So you got time to think, Andre.
Good.
Well, I'm going to go real quick on this one, but I have a mystery from my second flight, STS-127, which was finishing the Japanese laboratory. We were at the very end of the construction. There I brought some cookies from Canada. They're called maple leaf cookies. They have maple cream inside. Really good.
Very nice.
And somehow I had brought lots of them in 2 little package. NASA had packaged them, and they put my color on it. So that's a little dot with a green dot to say it belongs to me. Put it in a drawer. And Bob, when I got at the end of the mission to distribute the cookies, there were lots and lots of empty packets. There was not a single maple cookie left in my drawer at the end of the mission. And to this day, and now I have folks I've flown with in this room, somehow it just happened I was there with 12 guys, 13 people. I've asked them many, many times, but I always get the answer, what? There were cookies on board? Really?
That's a real crime to eat somebody else's food. I hope that you can figure that one out, Julie. Drew, you got anything you'd like to add?
Just that I had the same problem with Nutella in space. I made the mistake of leaving it out in the open, and it quickly disappeared, so I had to ask for more. But I do want to say thanks to the next generation of explorers, the people that have come out to listen to us and learn about what we're doing and the message we're trying to share. And I'd also like to say, you know, the way our civilization is moving forward and our species, the things that we see happening in the world, none of this is new. And we should all just work hard to try to do better every day and, you know, try to contribute internationally to work together and care for the people around us and the planet that we live on.
Jim.
Every time Yuri and I get together, usually at an ASE Congress, we talk politics. And that's a hard thing to do these days because I don't understand Russian politics and what's happening there. And I ask him to explain it. And of course, he can't really explain it. He asked me what's happening with American politics. And I have no idea. I can't explain it to him. But we always walk away still as friends and space brothers. And it doesn't matter what the political things are that are swirling around us because we shared a very special experience working and training and preparing for and then living together in space. And it's an equalizer. It makes you not think about someone's politics or their background or their race or their creed or their religion or anything else. You think about them as a human being that you've become bonded with and a true friend with. And that's what I took away from I think the main thing from my International Space Station experience was just that very human level.
Я по-русски скажу. Я думаю, что нам в наше название Конгресса надо добавить Конгресс счастливых людей, потому что такой опыт, как у нас, его нет ни у кого. И поскольку придет время, и мы тоже должны будем уйти, нам надо как можно больше оставить этого опыта для молодых людей. Мы должны писать книги, снимать фильмы, встречаться с людьми, попытаться поделиться опытом, уникальным опытом, который мы приобрели, потому что этот опыт никого не может оставить равнодушным. Как вид Земли, как невесомость, мы должны каждый работать, чтобы оставить этот опыт последующим. Спасибо.
And I would like to finish with thanking all the people who make it possible. We talk about astronauts here. We are a team on board, but it's only possible because we are a team on the whole planet. People who design it, people who build it, people who test it, who qualify it. Mission control in Korolyov, in Tsukuba, in Munich, Huntsville, Houston. And I really felt that I was part of a big, big team. And I was just the hands and the eyes of the people on the ground. And without all these people all over the planet, 24/7, this would not have been possible. So thanks to them.
And you.
Well, I want to personally thank all of you for saying yes when I asked you to be on this panel. And you guys are all my favorites, everybody. It's so great to be with all of you and to be able to share with folks that hopefully will pick something up from this. There is not going to be a coffee break. I would like a round of applause for this panel, and I'd like my next panel to come on up. Everybody stand up. Everybody stand up. Stretch your legs, no breaks, all right? All right, you can sit down now. Test, test. All right, kill the music. Close the doors. Lock everybody in. All right, so we've now talked about Apollo-Soyuz. You got a lot of history. We've talked about Shuttle Mir. You learned about working together in a different way. You learned about the International Space Station and how amazing it is. But we have to have a future together. The International Space Station, as I said, it's coming down in 2030, and we want to be able to continue. And I believe commercial space is the future, and that's why I've asked these commercial space experts to be kind enough to sit down with me, and I'll introduce them. Dr. Tom Marshburn. Tom was selected to be an astronaut in 2004. He flew on STS-127, TMA 07, Expedition 3435, and SpaceX Crew 3 Expedition Crew 3, the Expedition 66 and 67. So a lot of space and 3 vehicles. I'm going to ask you about that. Tabor, let's see, 2023, man, you just got back. He was one of 4 selected Hungarian astronauts for their program, and he flew the Axiom 4 mission just in 2025 this year on a commercial space flight, and that was amazing. Anusha Ansari, Soyuz TMA, I should have put my glasses on, 9 in 2006 up to the space station. And finally, Etienne Stibbe flew the Axiom 1 mission to ISS in 2022. So you guys have flown on government vehicles, commercial vehicles a lot. I believe commercial space is our future, and I'd like to get your thoughts on that. So first off, I have one specific question for each of you, and then I got a bunch of general questions that you can just jump on. So Etienne, I'm going to start with you down at that end. We'll work our way back. What was your motivation for going to space on a commercial flight? And what have been the results of it for you, having flown on that commercial flight to space?
Thank you for your inviting me to speak here. So the idea that I can build the mission. When I go to space, I can decide what I'm going to do on the International Space Station. Now, when the opportunity came in 2020, and SpaceX just started to send people to the station, I signed up, and then I found out that no one in my country knows anything about the space station and what you can do there and what laboratories you can use and how to send material. And so we had to set up teams, and we set up 3 teams, scientific, educational, and artistic. So the idea was to invite everyone to participate in this mission, everyone in the country. Doesn't matter age, profession, and the idea really, in order to build the mission, we called for proposals. It was an open source mission. People send ideas, do this, do that, why not that? And these teams screened all the ideas, all the proposals from children, songs, performances, art, and had to go through NASA and the space station to approve each item, if it's to take things or work on a laboratory. And it was exciting because the result that you ask is millions of people participated in the mission. We were working full-time on those activities, and we got an incredible good support from the NASA, ASE, and Russian astronauts that were on board in order to complete those.
And I should have mentioned it, but Etienne he flew with Israel's first astronaut, Ilan Ramon. And Ilan was a truly amazing individual also. And that's a special bond that you had with him.
That's true.
Anusha, so I'm going to ask you the same question. You know, what was your motivation for going to space? And why do you think commercial space is important? What's the future?
So my love of space and wanting to go to space started when I was a child, and started as a childhood curiosity, turned into a scientific curiosity, and then later to a purpose curiosity, trying to learn about our universe, understanding my place in it, helped me understand and decide on my direction and purpose in life. And it's a deep passion and love that I had. My background and my life was completely focused on being a tech entrepreneur and engineer, and I was on a different path, but I knew at some point I will make a detour, and when I did, it really emphasized how important this was for me. So through the work I did with X Prize, we were one of the first ones to believe that a commercial space program will not only open the opportunity for millions of people who really want to experience going to space, but cannot make it through the very limited space program run by governments. But also, it really, working as a tech entrepreneur, I saw how competition had helped different industries grow, especially in telecom industry. I've seen that many, many times with different technologies coming on board. So we deeply, and I deeply believe that bringing competition and bringing a commercial rigor will help, in partnership with the government space agencies, build something that's long-term sustainable and progresses at the rate of technology instead of at the rate of bureaucracy. So that was my motivation behind wanting to see commercial space activities. And as a result, we've seen how exponentially the cost of access to space now has been reduced and continue to be dropped, which has opened up opportunity for investment in space, for different businesses to exist in space, and it will help focus the work of the government space agencies on the frontier technologies and on frontier exploration.
Tibor, as the newest space flyer on the panel, what were your thoughts? What stuck out to you? What do you think about flying in space? And share with us your impression.
Thank you for having me. Obviously flying to space is pretty fun. I love the whole thing. The launch was an unforgettable experience. I could do it any day. And I will be probably talking a little bit about the launch itself tomorrow. Coming back to what Anusha said, I think that's super important for us. When it comes to commercial space, I was actually motivated by the engineering marvel and the engineering achievements of these commercial companies. and reusable rockets. That was around 2014, 2016. That was around the time when I actually finished my university studies, my master's studies as a mechanical engineer. So that sparked my curiosity. And unfortunately, our Foreign Affairs Ministry, they announced the program in 2022 or maybe 2021. I applied and I got the lucky one and I got selected. The reason why I'm telling all these is that the story is basically only 10 years old, or maybe even less. A country like Hungary would probably have never paid that amount of money if reusable rockets never come to the market. So because of the engineering efforts of these commercial companies, spaceflight indeed got much cheaper, and because of that, it is actually an enabler and opens doors not only for investors and technologies, but also for smaller countries like ours. So Hungary is like 10 million within our borders, and either if it's a smaller country, it should have the chance to fly to space, and it should have the chance to inspire the young generations. So that's exactly what happened with us. With AX4, Poland, India, and Hungary, I mean, India is obviously not a small country, but all of the three countries have been waiting 40 years or more for their second astronaut to fly. And that was actually enabled by commercial companies. So I think it's a beautiful thing. And as you said, the price is gonna drop as well, or even more. And the possibility is just gonna come.
Was Peggy really a tough commander?
She is always a tough commander. Peggy, also known as a space ninja, we could have not been more lucky. I don't know about her. She had to handle 3 kid Labradors or whatever when we came to space. It was a really tough time for her, but it was awesome. And she's Peggy. I don't know. I'm looking at you guys. She's the most experienced American astronaut from female to male with her 695 days in space. She had to fly with 3 first-timers, which is an awful job, I think. But she did really great. Her superpower is building a team. That's her words, not mine. But I completely agree with that. And even though that she's so experienced, she is extremely humble and basically down to earth, which is irony. But she's the best commander for sure.
Tom, you've flown on shuttle, you've flown on Soyuz, you've flown on the Crew Dragon. How about giving us your impression of the 3 and the differences? What likes and dislikes, whatever. Tell us about flying on all 3.
I'm glad you didn't ask me which is my favorite, because it's like, which is your favorite kid? You know, I mean, if you have kids. Each experience is so unique. So the start and the end of all of them are exactly the same. You've been sitting on your rocket for about 2 hours. You do experience valves opening for the first time because it's never in a simulator. So you hear a groan or feel a vibration. In the SpaceX, you actually feel the rush of fuel as it starts to load. That's when you know it's for real, it's serious. And you're impatient, you've been sitting there 2 hours. Now in the shuttle, at that point, I think of it as a big rumbling truck flying down a rocky road because of just the solids and how they just shake you so much as you're launching, and the incredible wall of sound that surrounds you. Of course, when they pop off, then it becomes quite smooth. The liquid rockets, the Soyuz and the Dragon, are quite smooth from the start until you get out of the wind and the buffeting of the upper atmosphere. Staging on the Soyuz is completely unique because they light the 3rd stage before they drop the 2nd stage. So you see everybody go bam and come forward, and if the UHF is still going, you see people's faces just kind of their eyes pop open when that occurs. But when that happens on the Soyuz, this beautiful tidal wave of sparks go flying by you, ahead of you, and then of course you accelerate right past them, and they go flying behind you. In the background of the blackness of space is incredible. The Dragon is very unique at that staging point because all acceleration stops, and you actually loft for a while. It's very quiet. You almost feel like you're in 0G, but then the MVAC engine slowly starts to accelerate. Of course, in all cases, everybody's experienced it and loves it, is when you get to main engine cutoff, and suddenly it's 0G, and it's just wonderful.
Awesome. So toss-up, somebody raise their hand who wants to go first. How important is it that we have a commercial space station before we deorbit ISS? Is that important? Anybody want to tackle that one?
Okay.
You're building one.
Yeah, I'll go first just because it's incredibly important. First of all, kind of tied to your other question, why is it important to even have commercial anything in space? Because it's so difficult, so expensive to have and slow, relatively slow. Government bureaucracy has to answer a lot of things for its people, not just the bottom line for a business. So it can happen faster, but also the government agency has to do those things that businesses are not going to do, say send a crew to Mars, perhaps, or inhabit the moon. And so businesses can take over low Earth orbit, can perform those activities that have to be done there. And we always say low Earth orbit is the first step to everywhere else. Everything has to be tested. We're never going to build a Mars ship and just launch it and go straight to Mars without having tested it for months, if not years, in low Earth orbit first. And so every stage, a government agency is likely to lead, and then the businesses will take over from there.
Anyone else want to comment on that one?
I wanted to
Etienne?
ask you, Bob, you undocked the ISS, right? You were the first assembly team that was working on the ISS. When you undocked, you imagined that this could survive for nearly 30 years?
Oh, at least 20. It had to. Yeah, and you know, it's going to be really sad when it comes down. I think it's just absolutely amazing what we have accomplished working together to build that phenomenal space station that's up there. But my personal opinion is that you know, we do have to have a follow-on. There has to be a commercial space station. I think there's great benefit to it. So I'm going to ask my next question, and you can go back to answering the other along with it. But how important is it that we have international cooperation on a commercial space station?
So together with the previous question, I believe that the future of the commercial space stations will change the profession astronaut. Today, an astronaut is expected to do everything: maintenance, healthcare, everything. I believe like any sophisticated institute, like a hospital, it will have technicians, it will have the doctors, it will have the trainers, and I think there'll be opportunities for different professions, humanities, to go to space. And that commercial stations can offer. You see, they invest much more in the design, in the lifestyle, in the training, in playing games, and enjoying the sensation of watching Earth.
I think international cooperation is essential for our future of space exploration because in order to preserve a peaceful use of space, we have to have cooperation. Whether it's commercial or government, I think you can probably achieve collaboration with less red tapes through commercial activities. But even at that stage, I think it's important to have this balance of power by cooperation. And I think I agreed with the previous panel when we talked about how ISS has been a place where we demonstrated how nations can work peacefully and collaboratively in space, building things, doing experiments, sharing information, while still there are conflicts on Earth. And I don't want to lose that because I think the way things are changing in our societies, especially with technology and how there's a power struggle with countries and how their technologies can take over the world, I think we need to have one place at least that we can demonstrate collaboration will advance us further together versus trying to grab power and hold on to it.
I totally agree. I think the message of ISS, the most important message of ISS is peaceful collaboration. When we talked about and thought about our own mission, it was 4 countries. But what we usually said that actually we think that we are more alike to each other than maybe our countrymen back at home. So we have to realize these common goals. And and you know, common purpose. That was science for us, and then we can achieve these. When it comes to my mission, it was only a couple of hundred people in Hungary. It grew and grew. We invited researchers. We also did an open call. It was a couple of hundred people. Same for Poland and same for India. But when we started to train together, there was also ESA in the picture in Cologne, Tsukuba in Japan, NASA, SpaceX. And so basically only one small mission, which was a short duration mission, it was 20 days, that involved thousands of people. Only one mission, thousands of people from all around the world. And I think that's really, really essential because we travel the world, we build these friendships, and we learned a lot from each other. And you know, everyone is good at different things. And when it comes to your other question, I think there are many practical reasons for that. There are going to be commercial space stations, and there are different approaches. What Axiom does is that they will dock to the space station. One of the reasons for that is that they will actually save science from ISS, and that's important because there are precious equipment and science that should not be thrown out. So that there are definitely practical reasons. And the other thing is there is the emotional side of the story. There has to be a continuation. When there is a gap, like when Apollo ended, then came a huge gap, which still continues basically. Everyone knows that it's a huge gap. We should have been continuing something. If you don't continue, that's a whole other story. So I think there's an emotional effect as well.
Excellent. Tom, anything you'd like to add?
It's just the natural state of humans to do these things together. And what I love, Eitan said something, we had the privilege of flying together. One thing he said, looking back on the ISS, probably 500 years from now, there will be some scientific discoveries that are kind of woven into the fabric of life, and those may be forgotten. But I'll just say, and everybody else has echoed this as well, is the ISS is a place of peace, and will always be seen that way in the fundamentally most human element, and that is and kindness, I guess, between us, which is exploration and creation.
May I add something?
I've always felt
Bob?
that when we leave.
May I add a story?
Oh, absolutely.
So Tom and I, we were lucky
Please
to celebrate Yuri Gagarin Day, 12th of April. So the Russian crew hosted the whole 11 astronauts, the whole crew in their quarters in the Russian side, and we celebrated. So the first thing was to gather all whatever is sweet and pile it up on the table, cream and fruit and cookies, and it was a big pile. And we started eating slowly. We couldn't finish it all, and after really our sugar level in the blood was so high that we had to stop. And then Oleg, the Russian commander, he just flips over the table with all the cake standing here. And, okay, and now we eat fish.
I will also say a very quick story. When I was on orbit with the Russian guys, I get two gifts. Two very, very important gifts. One of them was a special Russian sock, which is completely different. And it has those, those things that makes it sticky. So it's completely different than the US version. And the other one was actually the same Apollo-Soyuz coin, what has been just presented to you, because it means so much to those Russian guys. They have been doing those coins, and they just bought some to the ISS, and they gave it to us, to the three of us or four of us. So it's I think it's a super powerful message again about collaboration.
So, this continuous presence, it really is important. Look at the Russians. They did not deorbit Soyuz until they had Mir up. They did not deorbit Mir until they were on ISS, and they've always had that continuous presence. As far as exploring beyond our home planet, I've always felt that, the importance of working together, that I believe that when we leave our planet, we should leave as the people of planet Earth, not the people of any one nation. When Artemis 2 launches to the moon, there's going to be a Canadian on board, which I think is very positive. So, our future, we need to work together on this, not separately. And I believe, for one thing, it's way too expensive, and we need to pool our resources if we're going to be successful. Let's see, next question. Give me one experience from your flight that really stuck out to you, that you remember, that you want to share with the audience. Anusha, why don't you go first?
Well, everything was so new to me, and my flight actually happened to be a fluke because I was a backup crew. I trained with Peggy, and I wasn't supposed to fly. I was told that I was selected to fly just 3 weeks before the flight. I had finished training as a backup crew, but I wasn't scheduled, so I didn't have time to do my own experiments. So I, organized with the European Space Agency and carried on 4 of those missions. But I think one of the unique experiences I had was one day I was just floating above the cupola was not there, the station was still being built, so I was over the big window on the Russian side, and I was just watching the Earth go by and just listening to my iPod, and there was lightning going on the ground, and I was listening to this music, and it felt like a display, a light show that was going, perfectly well with my music, and I was enjoying it. And then I had to remind myself that from this vantage point, it was a very peaceful, beautiful experience. But those in traffic stuck trying to get home, and it's raining, and there's chaos all over, are going through a completely opposite experience. And it just re-emphasized one thing that is common from all of us that had the opportunity to be in spaces. It gives us different perspective. It helps us see the world through a different lens, and just reminding ourselves of that when things don't go our way, or there is conflict or chaos going on, or big problems happening. I always try to go to that moment and try to look at it from a different perspective, whether it will give me an insight to a solution or just helps me see the other point of view. It has been an experience that I cherish.
We had so many great memories with Crew 10 and the Soyuz MS-27 guys. I would refer back, actually resonating with your other questions, it was 11 of us on board, 11 people from 6 countries, and out of that 11 people, 7 was rookie flyers, like seven new flyers, which tells me a lot about how space is expanding and how space is really about collaboration. So for me, it's always about people. First hour when we docked to the station, due to KU coverage, we had to wait 1 hour until our opening ceremony, so we had to kill time. So Anne McLean, she said, okay, why don't you guys, this was right after we arrived, why don't you guys close your eyes and trust us? And obviously they grabbed our waist, and we were 3 puppies, Swabo, Shooks, and me, and they brought us to Cupola with our eyes closed, and then they told us when can we open our eyes. And that was, we were phasing for 28 hours, so we saw Earth, but seeing Earth for the first time from Cupola, that's totally different. So we were just there, three first-time flyers, and wandering around for 20 minutes. It was a wonderful feeling. And then we still had time, right? So Anne told us that, okay, why don't you call your parents? So I went to a laptop, and basically, first hour on station, I dialed the number of my mom, and I could call her. And that was 30 hours after the launch, and I could feel her voice that she's relieved. She saw the videos, she saw the TV, that okay, we are docked, we are safe. And trust me, that was not the feeling that she had when the launch was happening, because I also called her from the launch tower, and that was a very, very different, very emotional discussion. But when I arrived to station, it was, again, totally different. Those were only the first hour of station, but those were really beautiful moments.
Tom, based on his question, I have a question before you answer. So having looked at the Earth on a spacewalk and having been in the cupola, what do you prefer, looking at the Earth in your spacesuit or being in the cupola in shirt sleeves watching the Earth go by? Which is better?
That's a great question. There's such different experiences. A spacewalk is so intense that, and you're on a timeline, you don't get that many glimpses of the Earth. I mean, see it all at once, but you don't have any chance really to sit there and study it at all. Whereas, and what you're amazed by is once you're outside the ISS, on my second mission, I'd been inside of it for 5 months, and then suddenly right before I was going to come home on an emergency spacewalk, I found myself on the outside, and you're holding on to it, and you realize it's not attached to anything. It's going around the Earth. The Earth is moving under you, and you go, wow, how is this even happening? You get that extreme feeling of I could fall. But on the inside, time is very valuable. You don't have much. But on each flight, I made it a point to grab a crewmate, go to the window, and to look at the Earth from the window with someone else, and to share it with someone. It's a very unique experience. They have a different perspective. Julie and I, we had a beautiful cross right over Canada at the top of that orbit when there was a storm and during the sunset. So she was able to just lay out all the beautiful places, point them out, and describe them to me, what they look like from the ground. Jessica Watkins, a planetary geologist who used to work on the Curiosity probe before she became an astronaut, pulled her to the window when we were going over Africa. You know, what do you see? Tell me with your brain. Tell me what how you see this. So looking out the window with somebody else, I think, is the thing I'll always bring back and never forget.
So Andre before spoke about the comedies that they watched in space. So we had a comedy, but then the Russian crew decided to check how brave we are, and Sergei there, they chose a film called Salute 7, and that's a space station falling apart. You're sitting there, the 11 of us, and we're looking at that movie. But I remember you're speaking about docking and undocking. So the docking, we were lucky to look through the window just a few hundred meters before docking, and I saw the space station first time as a golden jewel in the black sky, the black universe, not sky. So it was just a beautiful, beautiful moment, because space was dark, Earth was dark, and the jewel was still shining gold. And very similar, after undocking, we were on the Venus port, so we went up. After 10 minutes, we were out of our seat and watching the station and flying over the station below us, this big metal structure, amazingly flying with no power at a huge speed. And these are pictures I will never forget.
All right, so I'm going to try and get us out of here a little bit early because we've got a bus to catch, and a lot of folks would like to change into casual clothes before we go on the next event, but hopefully I can squeeze in a couple more questions. First off, what's one thing that you would like to leave with the students and the non-space flyers in the audience? What's one thing that you would like to tell them to remember? Tom?
It's so good that you're here because you are the future. There are concerns that our next generation's up to something like spaceflight. Greater risks are going to have to be taken, going to the moon and Mars. The path today, at least to get there, is very hard. Math, physics, science, engineering, medicine, these are hard subjects. But I want to say it is worth it. Every bit of it is worth it. So thank you for your enthusiasm that brought you here. Just keep at it, keep going. And if you want to be there, you'll find yourself there one day.
Yes, thank you guys for being here. My mission incorporated hundreds of people from Hungary. Lots of those people, a majority of those people, they have never been working in space before. So they came up with ideas and we created experiments out of those. So ultimately we created science to space, which was awesome. So now, back at home, I have a couple of hundred people hungry because they created successful space experiments, so now they want to do more. So now we have to create another mission for them. So it's a never-ending circle, but it's fine, because these people realized that whatever field they are studying or working at, let it be biology or law or whatever, if it starts with space, like space biology, space law, space economics, whatever, that's going to be the peak of that field. That's how I see it. So even if you don't want to be an astronaut, if you have the chance to work in something space, like space biology or whatever, you can be sure that you will be working on the hardest questions of that field. And I think that's motivating enough. So if you happen to go towards those paths, then you are really the future.
I would like to also just, first of all, thank them for being here and participating. That's the first step to learn. And also just remind them that, I'm an example, like Marcos talked about how he had a dream that seemed impossible. I'm sure for some of them, going to space seems like an impossible dream, but at least both of us are examples of, yes, it is possible, and it requires hard work. It's not going to be easy. But fortunately, I think there will be a lot more opportunities because we're going to have permanent presence in space, in orbit, on the moon, and beyond. And that opens up opportunity for more people to participate in the new space economy. And the last thing I would say that, experience of being in space changes you, helps you become a better version of you. And, don't relegate the future of space to humanoid robots. It's still worth it for us, even though there are dangers and there's harsh environment, there's still a reason for us to experience that individually.
Just to add to everything that was said, don't give up. There will be a next Brazilian astronaut, and probably on the moon, or even further. So don't give up.
When my mission was in the news, there was a query, like a questionnaire they asked the general public. It turned out more young guys want to be TikTokers than astronauts, which is not good. So, indeed, opportunities will come. There's going to be even more and more astronauts, so please be astronauts. That's much more than being TikTokers. Like, it's much more important.
All right, show of hands. First, who thinks commercial space is our future? You guys can answer too. All right. And who would go back again if they had the chance? Hey, first up, thank you so much for saying yes to being part of this panel. How about a round of applause for our commercial space panel? Giselle, I turn it back over to you. Thank you all.
Thank you very much for everyone. As we conclude this afternoon's activities here at Club Med Lake Paradise, we remind all participants that at 5 p.m. we will begin the official transfer to São Paulo, where the technical visit and welcome cocktail will take place at the Catavento Museum, one of the Latin America's leading centers for science outreach. We kindly ask all participants to be ready for boarding the official buses, following the schedule and instructions provided by the coordination team. We wish everyone a pleasant evening and inspiring experience in the city of São Paulo. Once more, thank you very much and see you there. Thank you. Bye-bye.